And Moshe said, Hear, O Yisrael, Yahweh your Elohim, Yahweh is one, and you shall love Yahweh your Elohim with all your heart, with all your being, and with all your might. These words which I'm commanding you today shall be in your heart, and you shall impress them upon your children, and shall speak of them when you sit in your house and when you walk by the way, when you lie down and when you rise up, and shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes, and you shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. Shabbat shalom, everyone. Shabbat shalom to everyone worshiping with us at home. It's praised to be here today. Amen. Now, the name of the message today is called Give Me Five, but One is Best. Let's just think about that for a little while. Every so often, something comes along that is truly worthwhile and gets attention from a lot of people. Okay? Now, I am not talking about Pokémon Go either. Hallelujah. The only thing worthwhile about that is that somebody finally figured out how to get the game potatoes to get up. You know what a game potato? Yeah, a game potato to get up off of their rear ends and walk around and get a little exercise. All right? That's what that's good for. All right? But many of them have turned into trespassers, or they have fallen and broken bones, or they've stepped into the path of moving vehicles. And the reason for that is because they have misdirected their focus, and they lost awareness of things that are much more important and relevant to a meaningful life. Amen? All right. So they step in front of a moving bus, chasing useless points. Useless points which are a digital reproduction of something that's actually nowhere else except on their phone. On their phone. All right. What I'd like to talk about today is something that is real. All right, see, now if you'll look all around this room right here, you will see real people. Look around. Those real people, believe it or not, and you don't need your smartphone to see them. Each of which is made in what? You know what? The image of Elohim. All right? Made in the image of Elohim. And it's our duty to love one another in real life. All right? Turn with me to Matthew 22. Matthew chapter 22. Pokémon Go. Matthew chapter 22. We're going to start reading in verse 35, and we're going to be on page 944 in the old ISR. All right? And it says, Matthew 22, verse 35. And one of them, one learned in the Torah, did question, trying him, it's talking to about Yeshua here, trying him, saying, Teacher, which is the great command in the Torah? And Yeshua said to him, You shall love Yahweh your Elohim with all your heart, with all your being, with all your mind. This is the first and great command, and the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commands hang all of the Torah and the prophets. All right? So we are to love our neighbors as ourselves. The problem is just exactly how do we do this? And today's message is not going to be so much about who is my neighbor, but it's about what to do with those who we already know are neighbors. All right? And to see if we can figure out the piece of the puzzles that we'll need to help us do that, so that we can learn to be more like Yeshua, because if we can learn to put this puzzle together, it will help us be more like Yeshua. Right? We can worry about the who else later as we're getting this other stuff down. Now, I want to tell you about something today. It's been around since about 2004, and I can tell you that it's something that I've used in counseling, and it's helped us work with a lot of people and work in our own relationships. Some of you will know what I'm talking about. There was a book written by a gentleman named Gary Chapman in 2004, which was a result of his many years of counseling. The book is called The 5 Love Languages. Anybody familiar with it? Okay. Now, you don't have to memorize the whole book to benefit from its lessons. All right? But if you know little or nothing about this book, before you roll your eyes or switch to a different video, I told you that it would help you be more like YHWH. Right? And that should be of interest to a follower of YHWH. Amen? Right? Now, Dr. Chapman believes that love is spoken or expressed to others in these 5 ways. Now, you may think of some others that work, but these seem to get it worked out for me. All right? They are words of affirmation, quality time, gifts, acts of service, and physical touch. Okay? And we can see YHWH showing love in all of these ways throughout his ministry. Isn't that interesting? All right? And to tell you the truth, we see the Father showing love in these ways as well. All right? Now, one thing is true. Yahweh does reprove and discipline those that He loves. All right? But he also shows kindness to thousands, to those who love Him and guard His commands. But if you think about it, reproof and discipline might actually come under the heading of quality time. But so does prayer and meditation. All right? Those are quality time. All right, but if we're to walk as YHWH walked, we might do well to learn to love as He loved, because He said the 2 great commands were love Yahweh and love your neighbor as yourself. Now, when it comes to words of affirmation, quality time, gifts, acts of service, and physical touch, most of us like all of them. Now, I've come across a person or two that had a problem with, say, they didn't want to be touched by anybody, that kind of thing. Yeah, but need to hug them real tight. But overwhelmingly, most of us like all of them. The thing that is this is, one will tend to be highest on your list of importance. Another will be second, and so on. And that's why I named it, give me 5, but 1 is best. All right. For instance, gifts may be absolutely the lowest thing on your list of things that you either do to show people love or that make you feel loved, when they're given to you. But let's say your grandmother, she sure does like that non-stick cookware that she sees on the television set that can't be scratched no matter what. And you buy it for her, and you surprise her with it, and it just makes her day. Even though it may have been lowest on your list of priorities, it makes her day. And you feel good that the gift that you blessed Grandma with brought her joy. All right? By the same token, even if gifts is not your thing, most likely when Grandma surprises you with a gift, it's still going to make you feel loved just the same way, won't it? Yeah. All these people that are hiding gifts in here are doing like this. No, it's going to make us all feel good. All right. But let's say Grandma's primary love language is quality time. All right, Grandma's love language is quality time. And every time that you make time to go visit her or invite her over to your house, etc., it will cause her to feel loved more than a whole room of that non-scratch, non-stick cookware. And we all have a primary love language. But we do not all share the same primary love language. And one of the ways that we can love our neighbor as ourselves is by loving them with all of them But if we can figure out which is their primary and their secondary love language, we can help them to feel love in a similar way as when someone shows us love in our primary love language. Does that make sense? Right? Like the way Grandma feels when we spend quality time with her, even if quality time isn't my thing. Let's say my thing is words of affirmation, you know, but I go hang out with Grandma, and Grandma tells me how wonderful I am. Right, we'll get more into that later, but I want to show you how Yahshua and his ministry showed love in all of these ways. And those are words of affirmation, quality time, acts of service, gifts, and physical touch. Okay, so we're going to start with words of affirmation. Right? So turn with me to Matthew 16. We're still in Matthew here. Matthew 16. We're going to read a good bit of Scripture today. We're going to read a good bit of Scripture. Matthew 16, we're going to start reading in verse 13, which is on page 936. In the old ISR. Matthew 16, verse 13. Now, when Yahshua came into the parts of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his taught ones, saying, "Who do men say the son of Adam is?" And they said, "Some say Yochanan the Immerser, and others Eliyahu, and others Jeremiah, or one of the prophets." And he said to them, "Who do you say that I am?" And Shimon Kepha answering said, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living Elohim." And look what Yahshua says. And Yahshua answering said to him, "Blessed are you, Shimon Bar Yonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father in the heavens. And I also say to you that you are Kepha. And on this rock I shall build my assembly, and the gates of the grave shall not overcome it. And I shall give you the keys of the reign of the heavens, and whatever you bind on earth shall be having been bound in the heavens, and whatever you loosen on earth shall be having been loosened in the heavens." That, you know what? That's something that'd be a wonderful thing for Yahshua to say. You know, blessed are you, fill in your name. For flesh and blood's not revealed this to you, but my Father in the heavens, and all the rest of it. Right? And that might make you feel good anyway, but if you're a words of affirmation person, you're going to say, "Wow, that really made me feel special." All right, Luke chapter 7. We're probably going to, there's lots and lots of examples of these. We're probably going to hit about 2 or 3 in each one of them. Luke 7, going to be on page 988 in the old ISR. I'm going to start reading in verse 2. Luke 7, verse 2. "And a certain captain's servant, who was valuable to him, was sick and about to die. And hearing about Yahshua, he sent elders of the Yehudim," that would be the Jews, "to him, asking him to come and heal his servant. And when they came to Yahshua, they begged him earnestly, saying, 'He is worthy for you to grant this to him, for he loves our nation and has built the congregation for us.' So Yahshua went with them. However, he was not far from the house when the captain sent friends to him, saying to him, 'Master, do not trouble yourself, for I am not worthy that you should come under my roof. For this reason I did not even think myself worthy to come to you. But I say a word, and my servant, but say a word, and my servant shall be healed. For I too am a man appointed under authority, having soldiers under me. And I say to one, go, and he goes, and to another, come, and he comes, and to my servant, do this, and he does it.' And Yahshua heard this, and when Yahshua heard this, he marveled at him, and turned around and said to the crowd that followed him, 'I say to you, not even in Israel have I found such great belief.' And those who were sent returning to the house, found the servant who had been sick in good health. Can you imagine YHWH saying that about you? You know? Even in Israel, I haven't seen such belief. All right? John chapter 15. John chapter 15. We're going to be on page 1039. We're going to start reading in verse 15. John 15, 15. This is YHWH talking to his taught ones. He says, "No longer do I call you servants, for a servant does not know what his master is doing. But I have called you friends. For all teachings which I heard from my Father I have made known to you. You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you that you should go and bear fruit, and that your fruit should remain, so that whatever you ask the Father in my name He might give to you. These words I command you, so that you love one another." Can you imagine YHWH saying, "You didn't choose me, I chose you. And I don't call you servants, you're my friends." So here's some examples that we see of YHWH using words of affirmation to show love. That's what these words I command you, so that you love one another. All right? Let's look at some quality time. Now, we know that YHWH spent much quality time with his taught ones all the time. All right? He also spent much time in prayer with his Heavenly Father. He'd go away to a private place just to be with his Father and spend what? Quality time. All right? But here's some other examples. Matthew 9. Matthew 9. We're going to start reading in verse 9, which is on page 925, the old one. And see, one of the reasons I'm sharing these things with you is because if we look at what YHWH did and we apply these things in our relationship with others, our relationships with others is going to be more like YHWH's. All right? Matthew 9:9. "And as YHWH passed on from there, he saw a man called Matthew sitting in the tax office. And he said to him, 'Follow me.' And he rose and followed him, and it came to be, as YHWH sat at the table in the house, that see many tax collectors and sinners came and sat down with him and his taught ones. And when the Pharisees saw it, they said to his taught ones, 'Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?'" You know why? Because he's spending quality time. Look what he says next. And YHWH hearing this said, "Those who are strong have no need of a physician, but those who are sick. But go and learn what it means. I desire compassion and not offerings, for I did not come to call the righteous to repentance, but sinners." All right? There's YHWH spending quality time with people so that he can do what? So that he can call the sinners to repentance. All right? Luke 19. Luke 19, we're going to start reading in verse 1, page 1007. Luke 19, 1. "And having entered, he was passing through Jericho, and see a man called Zacchaeus, and he was a chief tax collector, and he was rich. And he was seeking to see who YHWH was, but was unable because of the crowd, for he was small in stature. And having run ahead, he climbed up into a sycamore tree to see him, because he was about to pass by. And YHWH came to the place. He looked up and saw him and said to him, 'Zacchaeus, hurry and come down, for I have to stay at your house today.'" See that? "And he hurried and came down and received him rejoicing. And seeing it, they all grumbled, saying, he has gone in to stay with a man who is a sinner. But Zacchaeus stood up and said to the master, Look, master, I give half my possessions to the poor. And if I have taken whatever from anyone by false accusation, I repay it fourfold. And Yahshua said to him, Today deliverance has come to this house, since he is also a son of Abraham. For the son of Adam has come to seek and to save what was lost. And he said, Zacchaeus, in verse 5, Hurry and come down, for I have to stay at your house today. And while he was there, same thing happened that we saw in Matthew. He called sinners to repentance, and that house was delivered that day. Would you say that Yahshua showed him love? Yeah, I think he did. All right, even right up to the very end, as he was about to go back to the Father from where he came, Luke chapter 24, you see Yahshua spending quality time and showing love. Luke 24, verse 3. I'm sorry, 23. I'm sorry, verse 33. Luke 24, 33. Page 1016. And rising up that same hour, they returned to Jerusalem and found the 11 and those who were with them gathered together, saying, The Master was truly raised and has appeared to Shimon. And they related what took place on the way and how he was recognized by them in the breaking of the bread. And as they were saying this, Yahshua himself stood in the midst of them and said to them, Peace to you. And being startled and frightened, they thought they had seen a spirit. And he said to them, Why are you troubled? And why do doubts arise in your hearts? See my hands and my feet, that it is I myself. Handle me. That may be some touch there too. And see, for a spirit does not have flesh and bones, as you see I have. In saying this, he showed them his hands and his feet. And while they were still not believing for joy and marveling, I think that have you ever seen something that made you so, you said, I can't believe it. You know, I think that's what this is talking about. All right. He said to them, Have you any food here? And they gave him a piece of broiled fish and some honeycomb. And taking it, he ate in their presence. In their presence. And he said to them, These are the words which I spoke to you while I was still with you, that all have to be fulfilled that were written in the Torah of Moshe and the prophets and the Psalms concerning me. Then he opened their mind to understand the Scriptures and said to them, Thus it has been written, So it was necessary for the Messiah to suffer and to rise again from the dead the third day, and that repentance and forgiveness of sins should be proclaimed in his name to all the nations, beginning in Jerusalem. And you are witnesses of these matters. And see, I am sending the promise of my Father upon you, but you are to remain in the city until you are clothed with power from on high. And he led them out as far as Bethania and lifted up his hands, and he blessed them. And it came to be while he was blessing them that he was parted from them and was taken up into the heavens, and they, having bowed down to him, returned to Jerusalem with great joy and were continually in the set apart praising and blessing Elohim. Amen. So even right there at the end, before he goes back to the Father, he's spending time with his loved ones. He's spending quality time. And also, he's blessing them. You know, there's another example of words of affirmation taking place there. Yeah. All right, well, what about gifts? Yahshua gave and talked a lot about giving during his ministry. He did. And here's some examples of expressing love that way. All right? Matthew chapter 7. Matthew chapter 7. We're going to start reading in verse 7 on page 923. Matthew 7, verse 7. Ask and it shall be what? Given to you. Seeking you shall find, knock and it shall be opened to you. For everyone who asks receives, and he who seeks finds, and to him who knocks it shall be opened. Or is there a man among you who, if his son asks for bread, shall give him a stone? Or if he asks for a fish, he shall give him a snake? If you then, being wicked, know how to give good what? Gifts to your children, how much more shall your Father who is in the heavens give what is good to those who ask Him? Therefore, whatever you wish men to do to you, do also to them, for this is the Torah and the prophets. Okay? He's not only just talking about you'll receive good gifts. He's also talking about you know how to give good gifts to those you love. Right? John chapter 10. Now this one here, we're going to read this. I'm going to connect it to something else. John chapter 10, we're going to start reading in verse 9. Page 1031. John chapter 10, verse 9. And Yeshua says, I am the door. Whoever enters through me, he shall be saved, and shall go in and shall go out and find pasture. The thief does not come except to steal and to slaughter and to destroy. I have come that they might possess life, and that they might possess it beyond measure. Is that not a gift? I guess so. I'm the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. But the hireling, and not being a shepherd, one who does not own the sheep, sees the wolf coming and leaves the sheep and flees. And the wolf snatches the sheep and scatters them. Now, the hireling flees because he is a hireling and is not concerned about the sheep. I am the good shepherd, and I know mine, and mine know me, even as my Father knows me, and I know the Father. And look, and I lay down my life for the sheep. Now I want you to turn from here over to John 15. We're going to start reading in verse 8, page 1039. John 15, verse 8. Yeshua says, in this my Father is esteemed, that you bear much fruit, and you shall be my taught ones. As the Father has loved me, I have also loved you. Stay in my love. If you guard my commands, you shall stay in my love, even as I have guarded my Father's commands and stay in His love. These words I have spoken to you, so that my joy might be in you, and that your joy might be complete. This is my command, that you love one another as I have loved you. No one has greater love than this, that one should lay down his life for his friends. What greater gift can one give? What greater gift can one give than to lay down his life for his friends, for the sheep? I can't think of one. Verse 14, you are my friends if you do whatever I command you. All right, and one more, John 13. Verse 34. A renewed command I give to you, that you love one another as I have loved you, that you also love one another. By this shall all know that you are my taught ones, if you have love for one another. Is that not a love gift? Just saying. All right, well, what about acts of service? Did Yeshua do any acts of service? Well, let's look at some. See, because there's that. Turn with me to Matthew 14. They're actually sometimes when it's kind of hard, I split them up a little bit. It's kind of hard to differentiate between the next two. But Matthew 14. And we're going to start reading in verse 14. And it says, "And when YHWH came out, he saw a large crowd and was moved with compassion for them. And he healed their sick." Is that an act of service? Let's keep going. "And when evening came, his taught ones came to him saying," well, let me just back up and say, because he didn't have to do that. He did it because he had compassion and he wanted to. All right. Verse 15. "And when evening came, his taught ones came to him, saying, This is a deserted place, and the hour is already late. Dismiss the crowds, so they might go into the village and buy food for themselves. But YHWH said to them, They do not need to go away. Give them to eat yourselves. And they said to him, We have here only 5 loaves and 2 fish. And he said, Bring them here to me. And commanding the crowds to sit down on the grass, and taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and looking up to the heaven, he blessed and broke and gave the loaves to the taught ones, and the taught ones gave to the crowds, and all ate and were satisfied. And they picked up the pieces left over, 12 baskets filled. And those who ate were about 5,000 men, besides women and children." It's a pretty good act of service, amen. You know, YHWH did this twice. He did that same thing 2 different times where he fed the multitudes that way. John 13. So it's a lot more useful than Pokémon Go, isn't it? Oh, man. John 13, verse 3. And it says, "YHWH, knowing that the Father had given all into his hands, and that he had come from Elohim and was going to Elohim, rose from supper, and laid aside his garments, and having taken a towel, he girded himself. And after that, he put water into a basin and began to wash the feet of the taught ones." I don't think anybody saw that one coming. "And to wipe them with the towel with which he was girded. And so he came to Shimon Kepha," that's Simon Peter, "and said to him, Master, do you wash my feet? YHWH answered and said to him, You do not know what I am doing now, but you shall know after this. Kepha said to him, By no means shall you wash my feet, ever. YHWH answered, If I do not wash you, you have no part with me. So Simon changed his mind. Shimon Kepha said to him, Master, not my feet only, but also my hands and my head. YHWH said to him, He who has had a bath does not need to wash except his feet, but is clean altogether, and you are clean, but not all of you. For he knew who would deliver him up. So he said, You are not all clean. So when he had washed their feet and taken his garments and sat down again, he said to them, Do you know what I have done to you? You call me teacher and master, and you say, Well, for I am. Then if I, master and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. Okay? I did this act of service. You should go out and do this act of service as well. Verse 15, For I gave you an example that you should do as I have done to you. Truly I say to you, a servant is not greater than his master, nor is an emissary greater than he who sent him. If you know these teachings, blessed are you if you do them. So he's teaching us right here and in many of these other places that we need to go and do acts of service for one another. Think about when he said, acts of service are pretty important, folks, because you think about when he talked about the sheep, the goats on the left and the sheep on the right. Who were the ones on the right? They were the ones that fed the hungry and clothed the naked and visited those that were and sick and in prison. Okay, those are acts of service. Right? Well, what about physical touch? You think Yahshua ever touched anybody? Well, let's take a look. Oh, and by the way, these acts of service are acts of love. Amen? Acts of love. All right, physical touch. Mark chapter 10. Mark chapter 10. And we're going to start reading verse 13, page 968. Old ISR. Mark 10, verse 13. And they were bringing little children for him to touch them. To what? Touch them. But the taught ones were rebuking those who were bringing them. And when Yahshua saw it, he was much displeased and said to them, Let the little children come to me, and do not forbid them, for such is the reign of Elohim. Truly I say to you, whoever does not receive the reign of Elohim as a little child shall certainly not enter into it. And taking them up in his arms and laying his hands on them, he blessed them. Now, I don't know if you're a touch person or not, but if you are a touch person, can you imagine being taken up in the arms of your Messiah and him blessing you? You know, that's touching, if you'll pardon the pun. But it's heartwarming. Sometimes the puns slip out and it didn't even need to be there. Right? It's heartwarming. It makes one feel loved. You know? Matthew 17. I'm going to start reading in verse 1, page 937. Matthew 17, verse 1. And after 6 days, Yahshua took Kepha and Yaakov and Yochanan, his brother, and brought them up on a high mountain by themselves. And he was transformed before them, and his face shone like the sun, and his garments became as white as the light. And see, Moshe and Eliyahu appeared to them, talking with him, and Kepha answering said to Yahshua, Master, it is good for us to be here. If you wish, let us make here 3 booths, one for you and one for Moshe and one for Eliyahu. While he was still speaking, see, a bright cloud overshadowed them, and see, a voice came out of the cloud saying, This is my son, the beloved in whom I did delight. Hear him. And when the taught ones heard, they fell on their face and were much, what? Afraid. But Yahshua came near and what? Touched them. And said to them, Rise and do not be afraid. That's Yahshua comforting them with a touch. Yeah, because they're, they're afraid. All right. And so many of Yahshua's acts of service were administered through physical touch. And that's why a while ago I said, some of them it's kind of hard to differentiate between the two. But let's look at a couple of them. Matthew chapter 8. Matthew chapter 8, we're going to start reading in verse 1. Matthew chapter 8, verse 1. And when he came down from the mountain, large crowds followed him, and see, a leper came and bowed down before him saying, Master, if you desire, you're able to make me clean. Folks, do you know who the most detested people in the whole land of Israel were? It was the lepers. They were outcasts. You didn't go near a leper. Verse 3. And stretching out his hand, Yahshua did what? Touched him. Touched him. Saying, I desire it, be cleansed. And immediately his leprosy was cleansed. And Yahshua said to him, See, mention it to no one, but go your way and show yourself to the priest, excuse me, and offer the gift that Moshe commanded as a witness to them. Okay, so also we can note that there he is talking about Moshe again, but he's showing love through an act of service by physical touch. All right, how about verse 14? Matthew 8, verse 14. And when Yeshua had come into the house of Kepha, Peter, he saw his wife's mother laying sick with inflammation, and he touched her hand. Touched her hand. And the inflammation left her, and she arose and served them. And one more. Matthew chapter 20. Matthew chapter 20. I'm going to start reading in verse 29. Matthew 20 and verse 29. And as they were leaving Jericho, a large crowd followed him. And see, two blind men sitting by the way, having heard that Yeshua was passing by, cried out saying, Have compassion on us, O Master, Son of David. And the crowd rebuked them that they should be silent. But they cried out all the more, saying, Have compassion on us, O Master, Son of David. And Yeshua stopped and called them and said, What do you wish me to do for you? And they said to him, Master, that our eyes be opened. And having been moved with compassion, Yeshua touched their eyes. And immediately their eyes received sight, and they followed him. Right? So how'd we do? Did we show where Yeshua was using all 5 of these love languages in his ministry as he went through showing love to people? I think we did. And perhaps you can think of some other headings, like I said before, under which love can be spoken. But these 5, we really do see how Yeshua related love to people in all these ways. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about how the 5 love languages work. All right, you don't have to know the whole book. You just need to have some of the fundamentals of it. One of the things is this, is Dr. Chapman, he refers to your love tank, whether your love tank's full or empty. Because if it's empty, you feel unloved, out of love gas, you know. And if your tank's full, you feel love. Now, this is kind of how this works, and we're going to talk a little bit about, I guess, about spouses to start with, but you can have these things going with people that you work with, or even with your children, especially with your children. All right. But let's say he's a words of affirmation guy, okay, and she is an acts of service gal, all right, and she is forever making sure that his clothes are folded and his lunch is waiting on him when he goes out, and that his towels are laid out for him, and she picks up the things that he needs, you know, everything. And she's doing this to show him how much she loves him, because she's an acts of service gal. And typically, the way in which we are primary in our love language is what we do, as well as what we like to receive. And he really does appreciate her so much, and he tells her all the time, Sweetheart, I love you so much. You hung the moon. You were so pretty. You were so sweet. You're so feminine. The children couldn't have a better mother. And all these things. And he's just trying and trying and trying to express his love for her. But he doesn't carry out the trash. And he is bad to let the grass get high, you know, and he leaves his clothes, scattered around the house. But he tells her how great she is. All right, Now, all that praise, to a certain extent, is just rolling off of her. It's because that's not what fills her love tank. All right? And he's feeling, and he's feeling like, well, I work hard for this family so that we can go on a vacation, and so that the kids can go to college, and I try to do that so we can go out to eat and all this kind of things. And you know what? I don't think she appreciates me, because she doesn't ever say anything to me about all the things that I've got going on. Okay? Now there they are both with their love tanks empty, and they're one of them's trying to dump diesel into the other one's unleaded tank, and it's just not getting the motor running. All right? And the way this works is that when we can identify what each other's primary love languages are, we can do the things necessary to help the other person feel loved. Because in that situation, if he knows that she's an acts of service kind of gal, he can do things like, would you like for me to pick up the dry cleaning, sweetheart? Or he can also put his stuff in the hamper, because it's all around the hamper anyway, he's not that bad at aim. It's just not high on his list of priorities. All right? And by the same token, she will tell him, because that's what he needs. He needs to hear that he's doing well, that he's doing well. When you get to where you start doing these things with one another, it winds up where you naturally start getting better at building one another up, and you wind up filling each other's love tanks. Another one. His is quality time, and hers is gifts. Okay? Now, listen, gifts don't have to cost money. Some people think that gifts means that they're going out and all the time buying them the latest electronics and jewelry and all that kind of stuff. There is that, but I'm going to get to that in a minute. But the thing is I know people who their love language is gifts, and me and Debbie were talking about somebody today, and they buy all kinds of bargain stuff after the bargain goes on half price. And they're all the time doing this. But what this person's going to do is they are always going to be giving that stuff to somebody. They're always going to be giving it, whether it's a T-shirt or a sweater or a windbreaker that you wouldn't be seen dead in. They're going to give you something, because that's the way they express love. Well, if he's a quality time guy, and he's wanting to do things like sit on the couch and watch a movie together, or go for walks in the park, or go on vacations together and that kind of stuff. And she's a gifts kind of gal, and she's always buying him things like sporting goods stuff that he might like. Not going to get too detailed. She buys him fishing poles. She buys him electronic things that he might want. All this kind of thing. And he likes getting the gift. And he likes it so much he wants to take her somewhere and just hang out with her. All right. But what makes her feel better is if he does things like when he goes on a trip, if he comes back and gives her a souvenir. He just gives her a little souvenir, because that reminds her every time that she looks at it that he was thinking about her. And yeah, see, and so that's how this works. And it's important to know your spouse's love language. And also another thing that helps is when we learn what the primary and secondary love language is. Because sometimes you'll find out your secondary love language if your first. It's great if both of you have the same primary. That's easy. That's easy. It gets a little more challenging. If your second primary is the same, when you're total opposites, you got to work real hard. You can't get the other one to read the book. That's right. Now, one of the things that you can do is you can take an online evaluation. You can take an online evaluation, and it'll ask you some questions. and you can learn. Now, one of the things, I'll tell you this too, one of the things that's easy or helpful, I'm not going to say easy, is when a person is upset, what they tend to do is they will withhold the way that they show love. Like, for instance, if a person is a physical touch person and they get upset and they say, don't even touch me. Just don't even touch. Yeah, see? Yeah. See? Or if they're a quality time person, I just want to be by myself. I just want to be by myself. I just want to be by myself. That's one of the things. You know, and also words of affirmation, as much as we don't really want to think about it, sometimes words of affirmation, they don't just withhold. They don't just withhold positive comments. That's right. They say ugly things. They say ugly things, but that can be helpful. That can be helpful. But if you take an online evaluation, one of the things that I recommend is that you be honest and not idealistic. If you're idealistic, it's because the idea here is not to get the result that you want. It's to get the result so that you know what to work with. And so you be honest when you take it, because I know people that have taken these things and they come back and they say what their love language is, and I'm like, not on this planet. You know, and there's this too. Now, Pat's been involved in this before. There's a personality profile system that's taught at my company and taught at Pat's company too. And you'll take an evaluation in there to find out what your 4 categories, how you're high and low in each one of the different categories. But what happens is there's 2 sets that you go through, because one of them winds up giving you an idea of how you see yourself, and the other one gives you an idea of how others see you, and they're not always the same thing. Though they may be close, they're not always the same thing, and that can be helpful. But knowing what your love language is not enough. It's not just, you know, if you're a quality time person and you know you're a quality time person, and all you want to do is go hang out at other people's places so they can be, you know, you can be around them and eat their chips and drink their soft drinks and everything, but you're never going to see grandma because grandma's a quality time person. Okay, if you're an acts of service person and no one, or you think you're an acts of service person, but no one ever sees you doing any acts of service. If you believe you're a physical touch person, and you like people to touch you, and but you don't ever reach out to touch anyone. If you are a words of affirmation person, and you really love it when people say things to you and tell you how wonderful you are, that you're just the best there ever was, but that kind of stuff never comes out of your mouth, do you know what? You're not loving. Knowing your love language doesn't mean that you're loving anybody but yourself. Oh yeah, I know what makes me feel good, but am I not only am I not expressing that to people, but am I trying to find out what your love language is, or your love language, so that I can show you love in the way that makes you feel loved. All right, now, I want to say this again. This helps with all your relationships. It really does. It helps with all your relationships, especially with your close relationships, especially with your spouses, especially with your children, but even with your co-workers, you know. Now, Pat, that doesn't mean you go up and kiss your boss. He's a nice guy, but he's not. He is, okay. But if he's a touch guy, if he's the kind of guy that always comes up and slaps you on the back and everything, he probably likes a good handshake, or pat on the back of himself, kind of thing. But you see, this is the thing. One of the things that we're supposed to do as Nazarenes is walk which way? We're supposed to walk as Yeshua walked, right? And so when we see Yeshua giving people words of affirmation and spending quality time with people and loving people with gifts and acts of service and physical touch, might not be that big of a stretch for us to maybe try to spread some words of affirmation and spend some quality time and give gifts when they're appropriate and acts of service and physical touch. Amen? Right. 2 scriptures before we conclude today. Matthew 22. That ought to be pretty close. I'm going to start reading in verse 37. We've read both of these earlier in the sermon and the message, but I want to read them again. Matthew 22:37. And Yeshua said to him, you shall love Yahweh your Elohim with all your heart, and with all your being, and with all your mind. And I would say too, folks, that you can use those 5 love languages in that direction. Amen? You can use those 5 love languages in that direction. This is the first and great command, and the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. And on these 2 commands, hang all the Torah and the prophets. And our last verse for today is Matthew 7. It's going to be close to verse 10. It's not going to be verse 10, but it's going to be close to verse 10. Matthew 7. Matthew 7 and verse 12. Therefore, whatever you wish men to do to you, do also to them, for this is the Torah and the prophets. And if I want for people to love me in the way that makes me feel loved, then I need to love people in the way that makes them feel loved. Hallelujah. Yevrakeka Yahweh, Baishmareka Yair, Yahweh Panavaleka Bikuneka Yasa, Yahweh Panavaleka Biasem, Lakash Shalom. Yahweh bless you and guard you. Yahweh make His face to shine upon you and show favor to you. Yahweh lift up His face upon you and give you His complete contentment.